certainly have fears that there is a serial killer at loose in Perth.
Sarah Spears, Jane Rimmer, Kira Glennon.
And every time you saw a young girl walking by, you think, oh God, is she going to be the next victim?
Now, one man stands accused.
If police are right and Edwards is the Claremont serial killer, he's been hiding in plain sight for 20 years.
No sooner did the trial of the century begin, illness forced the prosecution to abandon today's closing arguments. Hello and welcome to day 86 of Claremont in Conversation. You're with Natalie Bonjolo, Alison Fan and Tim Clarke, who, as promised, turned up at court today, poised with his pencil sharpened. But Tim, you knew something was up when the prosecution team failed to show.
We were all there again with bated breath, waiting on the street corner to capture the images of everyone arriving. Mr. Jovich arrived in plenty of time, but no one else. And the clock was ticking down to 10 o'clock, and we thought, something's still up here. And as it was delayed and delayed and delayed. We were told then we wouldn't be starting till 2 o'clock. I think the clear sign was that none of the families of the victims were in the precinct by 10 o'clock, which is always a pretty good indication of what's occurring. And then, lo and behold, about 1:30, we saw from our media bunker a little flash of Ms Barbagallo up on a video link. So that gave us then the indication what might be happening at 2 o'clock, and that's what did happen. Ms Barbagallo was in her own little world, and I mean that in the nicest sense of the word, in a home office somewhere remote from the courtroom, and that is the location that she started her closing submissions from. So just another very, very odd twist in what has already been an extraordinary tale.
That's right. It must have been such a stop-start day. And Ali, just tell us about the morning a little bit. Were there a lot of people there for court today?
There was a fantastic crowd there, and they were all queuing up again, and they were waiting patiently for hours and hours and hours outside the court, because throughout the morning it was only the media that was allowed in. We weren't told anything. We were just the media sitting there and a couple of the police. But outside, the crowd waited very patiently until around about lunchtime. They were told, don't wait any longer, go away. We are resuming at 2 o'clock. And our first hint that it was happening was that all of the family started arriving in the lunch hour. All of the family of the victims themselves, and I've never seen such a crowded courtroom as this afternoon. It was absolutely jam-packed. And so then we knew that it was going to go ahead, because they, as Tim said, weren't there in the morning. But, of course, it didn't last very long, because not only did Carmel break down with her coughing and spluttering, but also the video broke down. And so they persevered for a while, and then it just got too bad. It just couldn't continue.
So when you found out that Ms Barbagallo was going to be delivering her closing submission via video link, were both of you surprised that would happen?
I wasn't surprised. I was wondering why it didn't happen yesterday, because without a jury and it's a judge alone, although the flow is not the same as being able to deliver it, in face, I thought that the risk of adjourning this trial any longer, but Justice Hall said no. We've gone so long so far. 3 days is not going to matter anymore, and I'd rather you deliver it because of the video breakdown. You couldn't really hear her last words, and the defence were not happy with what she was saying because they couldn't hear it, and it was breaking up the whole time, and she was coughing. And so he said, look, another 3 days. I'd rather wait till she got better. It's not a jury trial. I'm the one that's going to consider what she's saying. And it was very, very disjointed because of both the video breakdown and her coughing.
And Tim, how did Ms Barbagallo appear to you? Did she look unwell?
Well, she didn't look too bad, but she certainly sounded unwell. And I mean, that was quite clear from the information that had been sort of filtering around the court, shall I say. There was some indication to me this morning that there were some tests had been performed or done on Ms Barbagallo. Now, I haven't had it confirmed exactly what type of test, but I think we can safely guess what they might have been, and they were awaiting results. of those tests. But again, we know that they're not immediate, so it takes some time for test results to arrive. Hence the remote location this afternoon. And I think if I'm going to buy Ms Barbagallo a Christmas present this year, it will be a mug with "Keep Calm and Carry On" on it, because that is what she has done, that is what the judge has done, and that is what she attempted to do this afternoon. But as Ali said, the only thing in worse health for Ms Barbagallo was the video link that she was using. Eventually that broke down. Justice Hall said, look, I appreciate your efforts, extolled the virtues of Ms Barbagallo's professionalism, but said this is, in his own inimitable style, less than optimal. So what we will do, can you give Ms Barbagallo a ring? Because 5 of her DPP colleagues were in court. Give her a ring, see what she wants to do. If she wants to carry on, we will. But if she doesn't feel like she can, then we won't. And there's no pressure, no rush. He literally said, we've got infinite amount of time to finish this case in terms of court scheduling and things. And that's what happened. The conversation was had. Ms Barbagallo's colleague, Tara Payne, came back to court and said, look, she appreciates Your Honour's understanding, and can we all come back on Monday and try again? So
and even if she summarises it again, he said you can even go through the summary again on Monday, repeat stuff, start all over again, in other words, because it was such a stop-start. I mean, she got quite a few points over, but then either she would start coughing or the video broke up, and we weren't quite sure what she could hear, what she could see, and vice versa.
Well, let's just, talk about some of those points that she did speak about before the video link failed. So with her opening statement, was there any, we usually hear those strong words that a prosecutor will open with. What were those, Tim?
Yeah, so there was an opening flourish, if I can put it that way. And the way Ms Barbagallo framed it was that it was similar to what we've talked about, actually, over the journey of the trial, in that these were normal girls, women, doing a normal activity in a very normal, in fact, affluent suburb of Claremont, and then they came across a very abnormal thing, and that was the predator who took them. And Ms Barbagallo said their case, their contention is that abnormal, that predator, was Mr Edwards, which really rung true with a lot of what we've talked about in terms of Claremont being an affluent playground, really, in the mid-90s for so many people in Perth, and these 3 young women being so normal, so vibrant, and then having this terrible thing happen to them. And then Ms Barbagallo proceeded to try and sum up her summation, if you want, and gave us a menu of what she will be going through when she gets to it. And there were basically 25 reasons that she says, and the state says, you can lay on top of each other, one after the other, to show that it is Mr Edwards who is the Claremont serial killer. But she was very keen to stress that you don't take them one by one. You don't take them as a chain, in terms of if one of them is not proven, then the whole chain breaks and the case falls apart. She says you take them as a multiplicity. You take them as a layered thing, one on top of the other, on top of the other, and then when you finished putting those layers together, the prosecution she says it is an unmistakable case against Mr Edwards being the person that not only killed Jane and killed Kira and dumped their bodies, but also killed Sarah and dumped her body somewhere. And of course, that body's never been found.
Ali, was it how you expected her closing submission to start?
Well, yes, apart from all the obvious glitches, but yes. And then, of course, she elaborated by saying that the 4 key facts covered the DNA, the clothing fibres, the car fibres, and the propensity evidence from the Karrakatta and the Huntingdale sex attacks. And then she went further on by actually analysing and explaining each why she pointed those 4 headings out and went right through the technical side of it. And even so that ending up by saying that there is formidable proof that the Bradley Robert Edwards is the male perpetrator that's done all of these crimes, beyond reasonable doubt.
Right. And with the DNA, I mean, I guess she would have started alluding to the various really important parts of the DNA, and I'm thinking, AJM40 and AJM42, which we heard so much about.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've said it all along. The DNA is the really critical part of the evidence, or certainly one of the main pieces of evidence, and that's where Ms Barbagallo did start off the main body of her closing submissions by going through, recapping, if you like, how that DNA came to be on Kira's fingernails. And she says that's because it was a physical confrontation with Mr. Edwards very close to the time of her death. She said the DNA was formidable proof, as Ali's just said, recapped that 80 million times more likely to be him than anyone else figure that we heard about when Dr. Jonathan Whitaker was giving his evidence. And then was just about to start going through the counter arguments, if you like, particularly in terms of contamination and the possibility that the DNA had come to be on Kira's fingernails in the lab rather than on the night that she died. And that is when the Gremlins did their best work or their worst work, chewed through the wires in Ms Barbagallo's computer, and it all went black. But I mean that the first hour of a closing submission of this length gives you the roadmap of where it will go, and that's what we have now, which was basically what we had before. But it's always better to hear it from the person that's been so close to the case, the closest to this prosecution case throughout the whole thing. And hopefully, when we come back on Monday, we will get to hear it in full Technicolor rather than on a glitchy video screen.
Yeah. What was the reaction of people in the courtroom when the trial was adjourned again?
Well, no, it was fine. They were just filed out. Nobody said anything. Ironically, we saw more of Carmel Barbagallo today via the video, because normally we just see the back of her head. But today she was absolutely full, and she looked a little flushed, I must admit, and she was reaching for tissues. You could tell she was not well. Obviously it was being done from a room away from the courts, but you did see her full face on for the first time.
She was doing her best to soldier
on,
yes. But as we know, we do all have to stay home, and I guess Justice Hall was probably not that happy with how it was rolling out, given particularly the technology difficulties, I suspect.
Yeah.
Neither was the defence lawyer, I don't think, either, because he shook his head a few times when he couldn't see or hear what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, as we've mentioned many times, Nat, I mean, there are very clear signs on the front door of the court that if you are showing any symptoms, that you are not to enter, and that goes for everyone, including the prosecutor in the biggest case in WA. And I mean, we all hope that it's nothing more serious than a heavy cold, and that's been the indication. But in this climate, you could never be too careful. But I think it is testimony to Ms Barbagallo's commitment to the trial, to the case, to the families, to everyone in the state of Western Australia, that she was willing to see it through when she was clearly under the weather. That's an extraordinary thing to have to do in any circumstance, when you're feeling on top of the world and standing in the courtroom that you've spent the last 85 days in, but having to do it from a remote room, staring into a camera, completely remote from everyone, but knowing the numbers and the weight of the people in the courtroom that would be watching you. It would be a very nerve-wracking, very unnerving thing to have to do, I think, to just sit in the room in a room on your own, giving one of your career's most important closing arguments. And so...
And you would have to wonder, Tim, whether she had ever had to do that before. Very unlikely.
Well, I know a lot of other lawyers in Perth have had to do a lot of work from home in the last little while. I think there's been a lot of bail applications made in pyjamas with kids and dogs and other distractions in the background, but
just not in the Claremont case.
Nothing on this in this scale. And the fact that Ms Barbagallo had her robes on, even in that remote room. I mean, obviously, it's still part of a courtroom, even though it's not in the courtroom. So, yeah, I mean, everyone has tried their best this week to try and get it moving. But Justice Hall, in his own style, said, "Look, we've all tried. We all know how important it is, but there's no rush. We want to get it done properly." And so a few more days to make sure that it is done properly is not the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both for your time. A very short podcast today, and thank you for your company. Lots of false starts at the moment, but should everything align, we'll be back Monday the 15th of June for day 87 of Claremont in Conversation. Bye for now.
This podcast is hosted by Natalie Bonjolo, produced by Kate Ryan, and recorded in the studios of 7 West Media. Sign up for daily emails and all the latest on the Claremont trial at thewest.com.au. And if local news delivered differently appeals to you, tune into WA's newest morning show, The West Live with Jenna Clarke. It's talkback radio, but without the interruptions. Listen live weekdays from 8:45 a.m. on thewest.com.au or catch up with the podcast.